Hey everybody, Tim here with Ethos Car Care, and today we're going to be talking about installing our Graphene Matrix Coating on this Audi A3. So we took this car in this condition to show you guys a general idea of what the prep process is going to be like, as well as the installation process of our Graphene Matrix Coating on a vehicle that needs a little bit of prep, but that does not need paint correction. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a lot of dirt and pollen and other contaminants on the finish of this that we want to remove before we go ahead and start prepping the vehicle. So we're going to take our Defy and our wet towel hybrid wash method and just start cleaning the surface. Now we're basically looking to remove all of the loose contaminants, the dirt, the dust, anything that's on the finish before we go to the next step, which will be our clay bar process. And our clay bar process is going to remove all the stuff that we couldn't get off in this initial wash. That includes stuck-on contaminants, fallout, any type of embedded contaminant, brake dust, that kind of thing on the finish itself. Because the goal of the coating is to make sure that it's bonding directly to the paint and not on top of any contaminants. All right, we're going to take our second dry towel here and buff off the residue. Now Defy is going to remove the contaminants without leaving behind any scratches or swirl marks, so that we can do this in a method that is as efficient as possible. We're still going to have some embedded contaminants left over that need to be removed. And the way you can tell that is after the car's been cleaned and you run your fingers across the surface, if you feel little bumps and little valleys in the paint, that's because there's some embedded contaminants that need a clay bar in order to remove. So we're going to go ahead and do that next. We're going to take our detail spray and a light clay bar, and we're going to go ahead and lightly clay bar the paint. Like I said, the goal of this is to remove any of those embedded contaminants that could interfere with the bonds of the graphene coating. Now you don't want to do this to remove scratches. This is not going to remove scratches or swirl marks. You're going to want to polish the paint if you do have some scratches and swirl marks. Like I said, this paint is in good shape. So we're just going to be doing the prep process for the graphene coating here. So we use the detail spray here as a lubrication for the clay bar, so that we're not actually adding any type of scratches to the finish. As you can see, the clay bar is removing the contaminants from the finish, the contaminants that are stuck on to the clear coat itself that the cleaning process did not remove. So we're also going to take the same towel here, and we're going to make sure we're wiping off all the residue that's left over from the detail spray before we move on to our next step. You'll notice even after this process that the paint's already looking a lot clearer and a lot more vibrant. And that's essentially because we're taking the paint to its truest form and removing any type of contaminants or defects that could be inhibiting the shine and reflection. But you want to make sure to be thorough. You want to make sure you're going over your work multiple times and not leaving any type of contaminants or residue behind before we move on to the next step. We're going to open up our Graphene Matrix Coating kit, and inside we have our Detox. We have one bottle of our Graphene Matrix Coating, and we have one applicator and 2 microfiber towels. The Detox is designed to remove any type of remnants or any type of contaminants or residues that are left behind from the detail spray or whatever you use to clean the vehicle, to make sure the finish is as slick and clean as possible so that the graphene coating can bond to the paint. So the way we're going to do this is very simple. We're going to take our Detox and we're going to lightly mist the same area that we clay barred. And this is going to remove the final bit of residue from the cleaning products or from the environment that's left over, and leave us with a finish that then can be graphene coated. You're not going to be doing a polish or compound unless you have swirl marks that you want to remove beforehand. This finish does not need a paint correction or a polish. So we're just applying the coating right to the prep finish. And with Detox, you want to make sure you're also being thorough. You're removing all of the residue where you can, and you're not leaving behind any streaks, because this is the final step in the preparation process before you actually apply the coating. So you want to go back, double check your work before you move on to the next step. All right, now that that's been completed, we can actually move on to the coating. Now the graphene matrix coating can be applied in multiple layers. Today we're going to show you the process to apply the first layer. With any coating, you want to make sure you're using some form of hand protection. In this case, we're using latex gloves, just to make sure that the coating does get on our hands and just to be on the safe side. So we're going to take our graphene matrix coating here, make sure it's shaken up really well so that all the ingredients are properly mixed before we apply it to the included applicator sponge. Once it's fully shaken up, we're going to open the cap and break the seal and take the applicator. It doesn't matter what side you apply it to. I like applying it to the gray side. And we're to apply the graphene matrix coating. We're to start applying it to the panel, and we're to apply it in straight line motions, back and forth, with a slight overlap. And the reason we do the slight overlap is to make sure that we're evenly covering the area. You'll notice the applicator glides very smoothly on the paint and should be laying down a very, very thin but even coating. Once you notice the coating is starting to not spread as smoothly, you can apply another small line of coating to the applicator and begin the process again. So for this car, I like breaking the sections up into about 2 foot to 2 foot sections. And I like to outline once I'm done filling in the center of the section. So I'll pick a section of the hood, about 2 foot by 2 foot, and I'll draw the outline and simply, with straight line motions, fill it in with the coating. And you're going to do that up until about half a hood size panel is done, and then we're to move on to the next step. All right, and now that we've applied it to about half the hood, the cure time before you actually wipe off is going to vary depending on your climate. The warmer and more humid you are, the faster the coating is going to cure before you wipe off. So you want to do a test spot just to see its relevancy of how long you wait until you wipe it off. But always after you're done applying, put the cap back on the bottle before you move on to the next section. And this basically allows the coating not to cure inside the bottle itself. So what we're going to do is, after we apply the coating, we're going to notice a little bit of a rainbow effect happen, which is more prevalent on darker colored finishes. This is the coating bonding on the surface and letting us know that it's doing its job. But shortly after, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, you're going to notice the rainbow is going to start to turn into kind of a haze or a fog, just like you'd see a fog on your mirror after you take a warm shower. This is basically letting us know that the coating is ready to be wiped off. And what we're going to do basically is take our microfiber towel, in this case it's our utility towel, and we're going to start wiping off the coating from the application area. And this, much like the other steps of this process, we want to make sure we're being very thorough and taking one section at a time, so we're not missing any coating residue. Because unlike a wax, this is actually going to crystallize and cure onto the finish. So any residual coating can leave what's known as a high spot. Now, high spot's an extra thick layer of coating of residue that cures and hardens, and it's a little unsightly. It's something you have to actually fix later on. So we want to make sure that we're removing all of the residue prior to moving on to the next section of the car. So we're taking our microfiber towel here, and as you can see, I'm doing very little small circular motions, as well as bordering the area that I applied the coating to. And then working in and filling in the center section, kind of much like we applied it. You're basically just going through and lightly removing the coating while paying attention to where the coating is and where the coating isn't on the finish. So you'll notice that you can actually spread the coating around the panel. So you want to make sure you're not spreading the coating onto an adjacent section and forgetting about where it is and leaving behind that high spot. So you do want to use different lighting. You want to make sure you're in a well-lit area to see the different angles of the coating to make sure you're not leaving anything behind. As I can see, there's a little bit of residue right here that you can see that needs to be wiped off. So this is something that would then turn into a high spot that we want to remove before it cures. Now that I'm satisfied that all the coating has been properly removed, we can go ahead and start on the next section. And we're essentially going to repeat the same steps that we did to the first section here. Take our graphene matrix coating and our same applicator, apply some coating to the applicator. This we just do a very, very light, thin line. You don't need much because a little goes a long way. And we're going to start the application process. So we're going to start by overlapping just slightly to where that coating application ended. On this, I'm going to do straight line motions, overlapping about 50% each time. And like previously, I'm going to draw in the border to make sure there's no bunched up coating application on the end of those strokes before moving on to the next application section. So once the application starts to thin out, I know I need a little bit more coating to the applicator before applying to the remainder of the panel. That's all there is to it. Your coating now has been applied. We're going to wait the 2 to 5 minutes for the coating to start to cure. In the meantime, we're once again going to put the cap on the coating, making sure it's not going to cure. And one thing to note is that if you do drop this applicator, you either need to get a new applicator or clean this before you start applying it to the rest of the car. Because if you drop this on the ground and it gets some sand or dust in the applicator, you could actually scratch the paint in the meantime. So be very vigilant where you do place this so that it doesn't get contaminated. We're going to take our same microfiber towel and our second one here. As you can see, it's already starting to fog up. It is a little bit warmer in here, so the cure time is going to be a little bit sooner. And we're once again going to be lightly removing the coating in small little sections. Now what this is doing is essentially leveling the coating and removing the excess so that what's left behind is a gorgeous shine and reflection. You'll notice that with your first wipe off towel, it'll start to become saturated with coating. And what this will do will leave behind excess residue and what will present itself in kind of a smearing or possibly a hazy wipe off, which is why we do recommend when you start noticing that to grab another microfiber towel that's clean and dry and fresh to then buff off that remainder residue. I'm going to make sure that there's no high spots left behind, and I can see this by the reflections around me. So I'm pretty satisfied with how this panel looks. I don't see any high spots or any residue, so I know now that that layer is complete. And that's really all there is to it. So to recap, we clean the vehicle with our Defy, we clay bar it to remove any embedding contaminants, we use our detox spray to prep the panel before the coating, and we apply the graphene matrix coating as followed. Now if you want to apply your second coat on top of this for even more protection and durability, we recommend waiting at least 1 hour before that application. If you're only going to apply one coat, that's perfectly fine. You do get a little bit additional benefits with 2 coats. But either way, you're going to get awesome protection with the graphene matrix coating. Keeping the car dry for at least 48 hours after application. If it gets rained on, it's not the end of the world, but you want to make sure it's staying away from car washes, soaps, chemicals, sprinklers, that kind of thing that could interfere with the coating bonding itself to the finish or leave behind some form of etching or residue that could affect the performance of the coating as well. So you're going to go ahead and repeat these same steps over the entire of the vehicle as we showed here on just the hood. And once you're done, you have a very nicely coated, protected paint finish with the graphene matrix coating. So we look forward to hearing you guys' feedback. If you have any questions on the installation process, please feel free to leave comments below and let us know if you have any types of questions in regards to the coating itself, maintenance, application, durability, those kind of things. We'd love to help you out. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.